Hello everybody, my name's James, and for the benefit of those listening to the audio, you're listening to Ask James, my regular YouTube live stream where I welcome questions from the YouTube community on anything football related. And to timestamp this, it is just gone 12 p.m. on Thursday, August the 31st. And I can't wait for tomorrow because not only is it an FPL deadline, and I hate Friday FPL deadlines, it's also transfer deadline day tomorrow, just to add to the drama ahead of that 6:30 p.m. UK time deadline. Right, let's get into the questions. Tiffy Ferrero, he's first, says, why is Joel Matip not included in Cameroon's team for their AFCON qualifier next month? I think he's retired from international football. I don't really know what else to say to that. I can't say I know that for certain, but I can only assume he's retired from international football. What an absolute bombshell of a way to start the stream. Rima Rodri says, why Liverpool are not accepting a £118 million bid for Mo Salah from Al Ittihad? That's a lot of money in my opinion. It's a lot of money. Yes, it is a lot of money, but it's relative, right? To Liverpool. So Tottenham are probably going to get a fee for Kane that's going to reach that sort of volume with add-ons. And Salah's got, 2 years left on his contract. So they're certainly within their rights to ask for more money. No, the Saudis aren't short. I think should Salah go this time next year, there's every reason to expect it might not be quite that high. But I think they could still, from them, expect to receive three-figure sum. The only reason it doesn't happen, I think, probably next year is if obviously for whatever reason maybe there's restrictions in place where the Saudis can't spend so much money, but I don't particularly foresee that happening. So there's no pressure on Liverpool. I think that I did a little piece for advanced tier patrons yesterday and said that I thought it was something Liverpool should consider. Purely because I think they're kind of in a rebuild operation anyway. And a little bit like what I'd said with Kane, where rather than stay with Postecoglou for a year, the best thing for Tottenham might be to just cut ties now. It doesn't feel quite that way with Liverpool. But I could see some sort of sense in it. If they're saying right now, okay, we're probably not going to challenge for the title this year. What do you want to do? Build towards it with Salah and then kind of start again next year? Tough. But then you've got a year now to contingency plan for replacing him. And I'm sure Liverpool have already been thinking about it, to be honest. So it's up to Liverpool, right? And it's up to Salah, of course. So we don't know for certain whether he'd like to go or like to stay. But it would be a hell of a task to obviously replace his goals and assists. But Liverpool have been down this road before. You know, they sold Coutinho. It was like, oh, how would they replace Coutinho? And they spent the money basically on Alisson and Van Dijk, right? And that was a game changer for them. Maybe Salah goes and they go and get a serious holding midfield player for a lot of money and perhaps a cover at centre-back or something and a replacement for Salah with the money. I don't know. So I don't think it will happen. That's what I've said. I'd be very, very surprised. I don't think Liverpool... I think if this had come about in July, there'd be way more chance of it happening. Now, so close to the end of the window. At least Tottenham got it dealt with Kane. I know it was just before the season, but at least it was before the season started. I don't see it happening. I'd be very surprised. I feel like he'll probably go out there next year. But Liverpool will still command a massive fee this time next year. David Rice says, is Matt Turner at risk of losing his place with Nottingham Forest signing Vlaki Domos on deadline day? Well, it's not deadline day and I don't know if it's happened yet, but we did know that Nottingham Forest were intending to buy two goalkeepers. So, look, I don't think Matt Turner swapped being number 2 at Arsenal for number 2 at Nottingham Forest. So, no, I imagine he would still be the number 1. Lombardetto says, why is Aaron Hickey not allowed to bomb forward in attacking positions in Brentford's matches? Instead, it is Henry going more forward. Is that correct? Look, I must profess, the only Brentford game I've actually watched so far was the opening weekend game against Tottenham. And obviously played a back 5 at that day. From memory, though, looking at the last 2 games, and apologies, I might have this wrong, but I don't feel like average position of Henry's been any higher than Hickey in the 2 games since. So I think with Hickey so athletic in terms of Henry so athletic in terms of how he bombs forward, it might have that appearance perhaps. I've been of the opinion for a while, and those who watch my deadline stream will certainly know at the weekend, I'd said if you were going to buy a Brentford defender, I'd probably just go with Pinnock, to be honest, because they contribute and the fullbacks at Brentford don't overly. So if you've gone Hickey and you're worried about it, like I wouldn't sweat that. So Again, I've not watched the 2 games, but I don't think there's a lot in it particularly. Hopefully, by the way, there are rumours that Rico Henry's going to be in the England squad, and it would be fully deserved and warranted. I'm hoping he'll be in it. Nisha Hortop says, Everton get relegated finally if they lose to Sheffield United on Saturday. Yeah, it's over, mate. There's no 34 games left to play or anything like that. No, not at all. I did say on a piece I did with Surge, which I think was on Patreon earlier this week, that I thought the game was more important to Sheffield United. It might have even been Tuesday's pod, to be honest. I think the game's more important to Sheffield United because the fixtures I've got afterwards, in the sense I think Sheffield United more probably can't lose it. Everton still have a few games, sort of game week 7 and 8. There's a couple of good home games against Luton and Bournemouth where they'll expect to get something. Whereas for Sheffield United, it looks quite grim after this week, I think. So I think it's a slightly more important game for Sheffield United in terms of must not lose. However, no one's down at this stage of the season. Honestly, no one at all. Remember the Fulham team that came up a few years ago in the COVID season? Everyone was after 2-3 games, like they got battered at home by Villa and stuff. Everyone was like, they're down, they're finished. They finished. And actually by February, March, they had a couple of decent wins. Like they'd won at Liverpool. They were looking quite solid defensively. It's way too early to be writing anybody off when there's probably a cluster of 5, maybe 6 teams who I think are going to struggle in the league this year. Swizil says, why is it taking so long for Barcelona to sign Jean Cancelo, even on loan? God, they are so poor. Would they need to pull more levers to make it happen? Don't they sell some more TV rights or something? You'd have to ask Barcelona that question. They'll know what's going on with their own business, maybe, more than I do. JHSUFC says, hi James, are you surprised with Man City allowing Palmer to leave? Also, how do you see Nunes fitting in at City? I was surprised at the Palmer deal. Yeah, I mean, it's caught most of us by surprise. But it's a lot of money for a player who, let's be honest, is unproven at Premier League level. It fits in with a profile player that Chelsea have been buying. And it also fits in with Manchester City in terms of selling a young product for pretty big money. It hasn't always worked out. Like, look at the sale of Romeo Lavia this time last year, right? Nunes is a strange one. I looked at him quite a bit before he joined Wolves. And he made his debut at Tottenham in game week 3 last year. And so I did quite a bit looking at him the week before. And I could certainly see where the Bruno Fernandes comparisons were in place. I could see that. There was obviously the Sporting Lisbon and the nationality links as well. But positionally, I thought, yeah, I can see a little bit in there, actually. We never saw that for Wolves. We never saw that. We never saw anything at Wolves last year that would have warranted Manchester City paying this volume of money. However, I've seen quotes from Pep Guardiola on video, on a camera in the past, saying he thinks Nunes is one of the best midfielders around, right? So he's obviously a player who's been very interested in for a while. He was getting linked with Liverpool a couple of months ago as well. So people have maintained an interest in him. I think he's disappointed at Wolves. I don't think it's a massive loss for Wolves. They've got their money back, essentially, that they may be able to spread some of those funds over the next 36 hours or so. How do I see him fitting in? Not straight away. Not straight away. And again, it's the old adage with new signings at City, like, expect more in year 2. So I don't think he goes straight in as first choice. I think he can play potentially the 10 position. He could definitely play a deeper role alongside Rodri as well. But to be honest, probably not first choice in the immediate. Callum Odumbelli says, Ivan Perisic played at left wing for Tottenham in the Cup. I know, I was there. Says, is that the audition Angie's looking and potentially moving Sun to striker, remove Richarlison to the bench? Not based on what was seen on Tuesday night, mate. No, he won't be doing that. So, look, good assist from Perisic for the goal. Otherwise, underwhelmed like most of the Tottenham players who started on Tuesday night, to be totally honest. That included Richarlison again, despite scoring. So, no, I think the intention, as I said several times over, will be to try and give Richarlison a significant run of games in the position through the middle. So, if you're asking that from a fantasy perspective, hoping Perisic is going to go in the team, that's not on at the moment. I wouldn't be surprised if it gets to that point, and I've said previously, like, if he gets in the team and it looks like he's going to stay in the team, just get him in, because it will be winger or it won't be wing back. But, no, I'd be very surprised if Perisic started at Burnley tomorrow. Andre Traore says, should Adama Traore now start for Fulham at striker position, and will he be a bench player? I think Fulham will primarily use him as an impact player, as they did at Arsenal last Saturday. I was obviously at the game Tuesday, started. He's rapid pace, but you don't ever feel like it's going to end up in an end product. He obviously played as the right-sided forward in a 4-3-3 in that game as well. That's primarily where he'll play. So, look, we've got Jimenez. Muniz played up front. I actually thought he was good. I said this on our Tottenham pod on Patreon yesterday. I was quite impressed with him up front. And he played instead of Vinicius, which is quite interesting. If something should happen to Jimenez and they don't buy a forward in the next 36 hours, could Muniz at 4.4 offer himself? Is he ahead of Vinicius? I'd be surprised, but I'm not sure why Vinicius didn't start in the cup. He didn't get on either, Vinicius. So, yeah, Muniz may be one to keep an eye on. Traore, nah. She's going to be used as an impact player, I think, predominantly. There's no way he's getting in that team ahead of Harry Wilson, as it would stand. Christian Prefer says, how do you think Remo Freuler did not suit Nottingham Forest style of play, and as now they're doing swap deal with Bologna for Nico Dominguez? Yeah, it probably didn't hit home as well in the way that Forest had hoped. There's a lot of signings obviously made last summer that didn't work out. I can't profess to know anything at all about Nico Dominguez. Dermot Whelan says, hi James, have 2 free transfers this week. Should I be looking to get rid of one of Onana or Turner with United poor form and Forest about to sign a new keeper? Nah. I mean, the one I would probably recommend is Johnston, right? But they're signing Dean Henderson as well, so you're going to put yourself in the same boat from that perspective. So, nah, I'd leave it be for a little bit, see how the dust settles in the next couple of weeks. Let's be honest, how many times are you going to pick Turner over Onana anyway? Like, it's not a stress, is it? To be honest. Areola's obviously likely to play more now, but then after Luton this week, they've got Man City the following week. Sure, then you can play Turner, but then in 6, West Ham go to Liverpool and Turner goes to City. So, it might be one to come back to in a few weeks, maybe. Pelos Pence says, afternoon, James. Which combo do you prefer? Mahrez, Mbumo, Trippier, or Darwin, Foden, Botman, Burn? I think probably option A there feels like the safest one there, my friends. Just because Foden and Núñez together feels like might be asking for trouble a little bit. We obviously need to keep an eye on the injury status of Sven Botman as well. And I wouldn't be that keen on going Dan Burn, to be totally honest. So it probably is Alvarez and Mbumo, Trippier probably at the moment. It's the more boring call, but might be the right one. Laxman says, why Fulham buy another goalkeeper, Stephen Bender, yesterday? Is Leno at risk? No, not at all, mate. OG Noz says, hi James, non-FPL question. Why are there no few black rather than minority refs involved in the game in the UK, and should there be more done about it? Yeah, absolutely. It goes without saying. There is, I think there's a black referee or a black linesman is part of the Premier League list this year. But yeah, I mean, it goes without saying that it's, I don't want to say closed shop as such, but maybe those groups haven't taken as much interest in the past. It does feel like it's progressing, and these things aren't an overnight fix. You could say, right, I don't know, target, say 20 or 30% minority groups, for example. But, you know, since Araya Rennie, have we had any black referees in the Premier League since then, as an example? I don't think we've had any Asians, have we, as a different example. So I don't think these things are overnight fixes. They need to be able to see the path in terms of the training and the education in the first place and have access to it. That's the most important thing. Then if they're good enough these days, it should come through. You would hope that's the case anyway. Bakaya Sukoid says, will Tottenham be successful in removing Deadwood, Light and Dombele, Sanchez, Dyer, Tanganga, Hill on deadline day? God knows, mate. God knows. But there's a lot of outgoings have obviously got to happen. The latest is Inter may be interested in a Dombele. Sanchez perhaps in talks with Monaco. Apparently Burnley put a loan bid in for Dyer, but he's got 1 year left on his contract, so that's of no interest to Tottenham. He might as well just go on a free transfer, which Tottenham aren't going to do. Tanganga is linked with another Italian team, or was it Augsburg I heard this morning maybe. Brian Hill's injured, so that one's a little bit problematic. And he may still have some use, where I think Ange hasn't really had a look at him yet and would maybe like to. So I could see Hill maybe staying around. And the thing is with Dyer, Tanganga, Sanchez, sure, you want to get rid of some of that, but I don't know if you want to get rid of all of it, because then what's the cover at centre-back? It does make me think that Tottenham are very open to selling all 3 of those players, that there might be another centre-back on the agenda possibly tomorrow, a name that maybe we haven't heard of yet. Hollis Stanworth says, hello James, is anything wrong with Arsenal attack? The team struggling to create as much big chances as last season. Look, it was in big control against Forest. It was in control against Palace. Then had a player sent off half hour towards the end. The Fulham game obviously got off to a disastrous start and ended very badly. But for large parts of the middle, particularly the opening half hour, the second half, they were pretty good, to be honest. And 9 times out of 10, they go on to win that game. So, no, I wouldn't overly have concerns. There is a school of thought that he's trying alternative tactics to prepare for alternatives further down the line in the season. Hence, looking at this right-sided bias at the moment. I think Arsenal probably go back to the left-sided as they did when they brought Zinchenko on in that game, and they instantly looked better when they did so. They also instantly looked better when they took Havertz off as well, to be honest. So, just think he slows the plays down a lot from. And I think Arsenal were at their best when they played to a higher tempo and with fast attacks. With Havertz, the vision just feels a little bit more laboured. There'll be a time and a place for him. He arrives in the box at the right time. He links quite well. Just as yet, it doesn't feel like an Arsenal player. I know some of you must be thinking similar. It doesn't feel like an Arsenal player at the moment. So that's not to say he can't come good, but I think Arsenal would be better off without him on Sunday, is my opinion. Harry Scott says, "Hi James, Sky question. If you still had Richarlison, would you hold till after Sheffield United game? That's obviously next Saturday, match week 5, and get Awoniyi, or just get him out this week? 8.7 million to spend and no Luton West Ham cover in a 3-4-3, so any position." Yeah, well, I told to Alvarez last Sunday because I'd had enough. But having come this far, you're obviously going to take in the Burnley game, and then you're getting one fixture of somebody else before he plays Sheffield United at home. No, I think that kind of what you suggested, Richarlison to Awoniyi after Tottenham plays Sheffield United is probably the way forward for you. Javier Alcantara says, your take UEFA Champions League draw. Newcastle United grouped with Real Madrid, Milan, PSG. Can they get all three? I think they probably can, can't they? Milan, yeah, probably the most difficult one in pot 3 I saw. Yeah, listen, if Newcastle get that sort of draw, it'd be amazing. And if you're a Newcastle fan, by the way, you want that sort of draw. First time in it for so long, honestly. I've been down that route where Tottenham have got in after a while and you've had a shit draw and gone out. It's like, that wasn't up so much, was it? Like, we got eliminated, it felt like a Europa League group. You want them big ties. Newcastle get them big ties, they're still capable of going through. Because everyone will take points off each other and that, right? You'd say Madrid will definitely go through. PSG, what would PSG do at St James's atmosphere? They probably wilt, to be totally honest. Milan would be beatable for Newcastle. So yeah, Newcastle would want something like that. Maybe not quite that hard. But yeah, Newcastle want a draw like that, I should imagine. And I wouldn't rule them out if they did get that sort of draw. Amy F says, who out of Rashford or Mitoma would you sell for Sterling or roll? Thanks, love the content. Yeah, look, I can certainly see the appeal of obviously wanting to go to Sterling. It's perfectly understandable. At this minute in time, I think selling Rashford would make a little more sense. You can always flip that back to Mitoma to Rashford in sort of 3 weeks or so if you want, maybe. Sounds like you might be able to take that sort of route, Amy. So he would probably be Rashford. But it's a piece of paper between them, really, because Rashford go off at any time. If Arsenal use Partey at right back again, Rashford could have some fun on Sunday. I don't think Arsenal will do that. So, based on what we've seen so far, you'd think, yeah, probably sell Rashford is the right one. And I can certainly see the appeal of Sterling with the fixtures and obviously his performance last Friday night. That's obviously very understandable. Lewis Stapleton says, Brighton rotation starting with UEFA Europa League draw. Draws tomorrow, yeah, it could be. There's going to be headaches there, no doubt about it. Sweet Blue says, hey James, could you make a case for getting Porro over Udogie? Yes, I could. There's more risk. I think I should probably correct on something I've been saying for a couple of weeks, is that I thought Ben Davies would probably play one of the Bournemouth, Burnley, Sheffield United games. Having seen Davies obviously get his chance against Fulham, I think it's quite unlikely now. I think Udogie is quite integral to what Tottenham are doing. So where I said I'd stress concerns, subject to his involvement maybe in the international break, and he might not have any, I would think at the moment Udogie starts Burnley, starts Sheffield United. Based on what I've seen last couple of weeks, I thought Porro was genuinely brilliant at Bournemouth. He was completely left out of the squad at Fulham, which I think is to save him and let him recuperate for this. So I would fully expect him to start. The reality is, I think, if you knew they were both going to play every week, Porro's the better choice. Because Porro will pop up with these mad shots. He's got a blistering shot on him from distance and stuff. He could get involved in the odd set piece anytime Maddison's not on the pitch. So Porro really would be the better call. At 4.9 could be absolutely super. I'm just very conscious that if you'd have said to me after the Brentford game, will Emerson play against Manchester United, I'd have basically said to you 100%, and that would have been wrong. So I think there's more scope potentially determined by the opponent of who will play on the right side for Tottenham. Udogie is safer. So it depends what sort of mans you are. There is more risk with Porro, clearly, but probably a bigger upside as well. So yes, if I was wildcarding now, I'd very much consider him, I think. I'd want some cover for those fixtures 6 and 7 probably. But yeah, I'd consider him. And look, at 4.9, can you have him as a rotator with the way the game maps out with the pricing this year? Yeah, you could. You could. So I'd be very tempted. I'm not sure that I'd go there as a one free transfer. It depends on the makeup, the rest of your squad, your confidence, etc. If I was on wildcard, I'd probably build it a little bit safer. And yeah, I'd probably take a chance on him actually. Damien Rozalski says, Nottingham Forest to face FFP issues next season if they don't finish in European position this season because they are buying players a lot and not selling. Right, Damien, let's be real. Nottingham Forest are not going to finish in European positions, so that must be the end of the football club, therefore. Listen, we're not privy to all the information. I think they'll be aware of some of the stuff they've done. There's obviously a lot of players going. We mentioned earlier about Remo Freuler. You got Jesse Lingard off the books in the summer. Brennan Johnson might be about to leave in the coming days as well. They haven't gone that mad this summer. And think of the extra income that comes via the Premier League. Be in bigger trouble if they go down. So, do Nottingham Forest need to qualify for Europe to avoid FFP issues? Ain't really going to make a difference because it's on previous years anyway, so not going to make a difference. Murphy says, hey James, I'm sure you'll get a lot of similar questions, but what do you think about Foden versus Mbumo until game week 8-9? It's close. It's close. I think Foden would be up to 7 for me. And Boomer goes to United 8. It's not brilliant. Burnley at home 9. Burnley will see a lot of the ball in that game, I should imagine. There's good fixtures from Boomer as well. Bournemouth, Newcastle, Everton, Forest is a good 4. I just know what Foden could be. I think the right answer is for me to say Mbumo, because I don't even think there's a certainty that Foden starts this weekend. So the safer, more sensible answer, and for cheaper money, is to say Mbumo, isn't it? Bloomer says, why is Arteta not playing Reece Nelson after forcing him to sign a new contract and also not removing useless players like Pepe El Neni and Sambi Lokonga? I'm sure Reece Nelson was not held against his will to sign a new contract for Arsenal. And getting rid of shit footballers is not as easy as people think. Tony Woodrow says, easy James, FPL related questions this week. Go Stupinan and 1 Chelsea, or double Chelsea defence, bench Watkins or Rashford. Wouldn't want to bench either of them. Jeez. I'd want to see the Arsenal team before I answered the last part of that question. He probably would be bench Rashford. Off the 2. Rough that. Double Chelsea or Stupinan. Tough. Stupinan's probably the right answer there. If it helps, I'm probably lining up with double Chelsea and Stupinan this week. So it depends who your other player is, I guess. Would maybe be interesting to find out. Kadu says, I've had a mare, James. Don't know if you remember last week, but I took out Darwin for a hit for Isak as well. No, I don't remember, mate, and I don't think you should have any regrets because, to be honest, this time last week I looked like the right move. But did Nunes get 15 minutes at Newcastle, removing him for a hit for a player who most of us thought would do well last weekend? Yeah, it's understandable. Listen, it's outcome. Whatever. It's not that much wrong with the decision, to be totally honest. Edward S says, would you hold Richarlison for the next 2 fixtures, assuming Ange says he's okay for the weekend? There's no reason to think he's not okay for the weekend. Not aware of any problem. Yes, he came off, but that was to shove things around a little bit, and he'd already committed to bringing Scarlett on, so he wasn't going to take him back off. Here's the thing, I certainly wouldn't buy now, but selling it on with those 2 fixtures, 2 promoted teams, I'd be very tempted if I had him to probably give it the extra 2. It's tough. It's a tough one. It's a tough one. I spoke about it earlier this week that you could see it being another 2 and then he gets like a brace and assist against Sheffield United or something. And if I told you now that was going to happen, you'd hold, wouldn't you? So unless you're certain of where you want to go, if you said to me, right, James, definitely want to get Maddison instead and I can do it, and you want to do it, I'm not going to tell you no. Definitely not. And similar with Sterling, etc. But I can understand if you're already on thinking, yeah, 2 more. I get it. What I would say is whatever he does in those 2 fixtures, commit now to selling afterwards. Even if you got like 5 in the next 2, it'd probably still be sell based on what I've seen so far. Mind you, if he gets 5 in the next 2, he'll probably feel quite different about it, and we might all feel different about him. I suspect he'll return in the next 2. More likely next week. And that's probably his valuation enough to say just leave it. Roseanne Fleur says, will you be able to maintain your number 1 spot in the Riccarba League after game week 4 as Clayton and Sudge have reduced the points gap on you last week? I have no idea, Roseanne. And there's no real point looking at mini leagues at this stage of the season. Edward S says, how good a signing do you think Brennan Johnson would be for us? Can I be honest? I'm not convinced about it at all. I'm not. Multifunctional in terms of positioning. He's young. He's homegrown. That's really important to Tottenham at the moment. I think that's why they're probably pushing the narrative on it. I can see it happening. Do I think he automatically goes in as first choice? No, I'm not sure. I think it primarily would be competition for Kulusevski. And I sit and I think, is that an upgrade? I'm not really sure that it is. So, it certainly improves the squad. Like, I'm not going to complain if we buy him. But I'm not convinced about it. I'll be totally honest. Not convinced at all. Let's Talk FPL says, who's your favourite 8.7 million player to bring into Sky for Nakamba after Friday's game? Thinking of Bumo for the captaincy against Forest and fixtures. Yeah, it's not a bad shout, Andy. We've got similar points in Sky at the moment. I think it's per usual. We might be doing a little bit better than me. It's a reasonable one. Personally, I'm going to Bissouma if you haven't got already, Andy. But you've obviously got more in the bank to play with. Maybe if you get a leak on Manchester City team tomorrow, something like an Alvarez, maybe. Yeah, I think it's reasonable. If you want to go down that route with Mbumo, the decent fixtures, the extra captaincy against Forest. Even though we think Brentford will buy someone, you'll obviously have the information by the time you come around to making this decision. I can't see it being a problem for Mbumo. So, yeah, that's absolutely reasonable, Andy. He's probably not going to be near it for me, to be totally honest, with the structure of what I've gone through and stuff. But I am conscious there are other players I could drop to him should I decide to do it. But in terms of that captaincy specifically, I'm looking to go into Abwiniyi for a little bit. But yeah, Mbumo's a very fair shout. I would say consciousness, Andy, with someone like him is probably not a long-term buy in Sky. It probably is short-term, which with them fixtures and the Forest game is perfectly fine. Alex Turner says, hi James, who do you think is most in need of late transfer business? Well, interestingly, it feels like the next 36 hours might be quite busy because I think a lot of the bigger clubs are still looking to do some business, right? Most of them. I think, to be honest, Manchester United have got to do something with this central problem. I've already recorded a piece for advanced patrons talking tactics today on United and massive problems they're having centrally, both against ball carriers and midfield runners. And I think they need to do something with that. They're obviously trying to get Amrabat in the door, but it sounds like they want to do it as a loan with an obligation originally. Something's not quite right there with the financials and stuff. They've obviously already had an FFP warning, so they don't want to... I think they got a £300,000 fine, which is like a pack of walkers for me. But they don't want to push the boundaries on it, so they must be quite tight having bought Mount and obviously Rasmus Højlund as well. Might be that if they get a big outgoing, like if suddenly Maguire did leave, maybe they'd buy Amrabat permanently. I'm not sure. I think they will get that done. I think they need it. Liverpool needs to shore up a similar position, right? I think Tottenham need a little bit of quality of depth, no doubt. Do Arsenal feel they need something extra to cover for the Timber injury and whatever that situation is with Gabriel at the moment? Chelsea's just a basket case. There's no point talking about them. City need reinforcements. Palmer's leaving. Fine, Nunes is replacing. They arguably want one more. I wouldn't be too shocked if they do something. possibly most content of those expecting to be near the top at the moment might even be Newcastle, might not do anything. I don't know. So most of the clubs need something, but it's more certain ones you'd be concerned about. Like if Fulham lose Paulinho, you'd become really, really quickly concerned for them. For example, Wolves need some centre-back cover at least, but they're trying to get something done. I am aware of that. So that will certainly help. Even if it's just a backup, they need at least one backup in at centre-back. So, I mean, everybody, I don't look at any team and think there's no chance you're doing business tomorrow. Not any. It feels like everyone's trying to do something. And normally there's a few teams by this point you go, yeah, I think their business is done. I'm not sure anybody's done yet. So everybody's looking for something. It could make it a really interesting day tomorrow. JP says, Chelsea fan here, don't you think we are getting too excited against better teams we can't score more than one? Luton likely to whip him, boys, too. You tell me, mate. It's your team. I guess you just have. So I'm not getting too excited with Chelsea. Beat Luton. Fine. But they might do similar to Forest tomorrow, is the point, right? So Forest conceded 3 at United, 2 at Arsenal. If you've gone for like a Raheem Sterling and he scores tomorrow, you're happy. Well, not tomorrow, Saturday, obviously. You're happy. So I can see why people want to go there, and there's good fixtures afterwards. Gazza's Flute 83 says, hi James, Trippier being talked up for game week 5 with him turning 33 soon. Is there a worry of rotation with Livramento with Champions League games coming up? Yes, possibly. Again, I had a call with some of our advanced patrons yesterday, and we talked about this. The idea that we'd all be guessing. We'd all be guessing with Newcastle players, and that's not just with Trippier, it's with the Isak and Wilson situation and Gordon versus Barnes and numerous circumstances here that we don't quite know what's going to happen. Is there going to be a big rotation? Is there not? How important is the draw from that perspective? Does Trippier definitely get saved for big Champions League games? Yeah. And one of the things we discussed was, is Trippier worth 2 million more than, say, a Botman? And it's a really difficult one. Because if Trippier gets enough minutes with some of them good fixtures, particularly sort of from game week 6 onwards, then yeah, he probably is. Because Botman, with clean sheet, is probably just a flat 6. And you don't need to play that. It's almost good cover, really, someone like Sven Botman. So, I don't think we know the answer. I think I might be able to answer it a little bit better once we've seen the draw and the layout of the fixtures. But there would certainly be question marks around, say, the Sheffield United game in game week 6 if Newcastle have, I don't know, Brentford Sunday and Bernabeu Wednesday. Could Trippier get a break at Sheffield United, for example? Yes, that sort of thing could be happening. But I also understand why people want to go there. He's very much in my mind as well. Owen Walsh this afternoon, James, are there any ex-Spurs players who never quite nailed down regular starts that you think would be ideal for Angie's style? Any ex-Spurs players who... I mean, the pool is absolutely massive. How far back am I meant to go with this question, mate? When you ask me historical things about something, I start thinking about the 90s and stuff immediately. So I'm thinking about kind of quick, wide players. Musa fit in anybody's system, wouldn't he? But arguably not really. No, Basuma would probably be a better fit for this Tottenham than Musa Dembele, for example. Christian Eriksen is a kind of similar to James Maddison when obviously he was at his peak and stuff. Benson Core, he's not X, but I want to see if he can play that right-sided 8 position role. He could be great at it, but it's going to take a while for him to get up to fitness, no doubt about it. X is difficult. Fast defenders as well. Someone like Jan is comparable to Mickey van der Ven. Kyle Walker would have probably really benefited playing under him, I think. JP says, Ansu Fati, big loss for Spurs. Question, he'll do well with De Zerbi, in my opinion. Most players will do well with De Zerbi, I should imagine, mate. No, look, I'm not really particularly interested in Tottenham getting players in on loan. I'd rather than get him in on a year's loan with no... If it's not a loan with an obligation, sure, fine. As it's been for Kulusevski and Porro, for example. But if there's no obligation to buy, I don't really want Tottenham to do that route. I don't want Tottenham to look at short-term fixes. I want Tottenham to have structure and plan and think longer term. So if he's coming in for a year to cover it. Nah, listen, there's good academy kids coming through now, like Jamie Donnelly, who, if he gets a chance, it's a decent player. So they've let a couple of others go in the likes of Alfie Devine's obviously gone out loan. We think Dane Scarlett's going to go to Ipswich on loan. Good young attacking players are in and around the group. And you've got people like Hill who are going to end up staying, who he's probably not going to get a loan because he's injured at the moment. And I don't see Tottenham selling any of the other attackers. So if he's coming in, he's going to be like as cover maybe for a loan with no guarantee that he'd be a regular starter. I'd rather not do this. It goes back to my Kane point. Like, get a long-term plan in place. Start rebuilding now rather than just having someone in on loan. So, then that's not to say he wouldn't do great for Brighton, but considering Brighton's case, right, they've got an absolute dynamite talent there in Julio and Sisso, who's going to be out till the new year. So they need a shorter-term fix, right? They're not looking for a longer term. They're looking for something that's going to help them in the next 4 months. They need it. So, completely understandable. I think it's right for everybody that it goes to Brighton. Brian Lloyd says, hi James, do you think a triple up on City attack is viable? I'm tripled up on Chelsea defence, which isn't ideal, but that's where I'm at. Individually, they are all decent assets. Yeah, that's fine, and particularly for the next few weeks, for both Chelsea defensively and City offensively. Yeah, of course. You know what the risk is, Brian. I'm not going to tell you anything you don't know by saying if you go Foden, Alvarez, Haaland, you're going to run the risk with particularly Foden and Alvarez every week, right? And subject to the draw later today, might be we're looking at Haaland as a risk in certain fixtures maybe. So I don't quite think that will be the case, to be honest, with the spacing and stuff. Interestingly, by the way, City obviously got Newcastle in the Carabao Cup. I wouldn't be surprised if City go nowhere near being bothered about that. Purely because they're going to end up in that same position Liverpool were in for the quarterfinals, where they're going to have the Club World Cup and the quarterfinal fixture, and when are they going to play the game? They're going to have the same problem. So City might even take a view, like, I'm not saying throw the game, but they might just go to Newcastle and completely pick a second string team and not be bothered about it, honestly. I don't think it's a bad draw for Newcastle. Ethan says, do you expect Spurs to bring a striker in before Saturday? What do you imagine Poch will do if Richarlison's form continues? You literally put, what do you imagine Poch will do if Richarlison's form continues to stag? Oh, hopefully Pochettino buys him. Johnson can obviously play. I think that's what Tottenham are looking for, is players who can do multiple roles. So if Richarlison did get injured, you can play Son there, or you could play Johnson there. Or you could even consider playing like a Kulusevski as a false nine there, for example. Again, there's a number of young kids, probably not ready, but you could dip into that if Tottenham had a real injury crisis in terms of young forwards. Although, like with Troy Parrott and Dane Scarlett both going on loan, that's not ideal. In any case, it depends. In terms of an out-and-out striker, no, it looks like Tottenham are trying to do the Johnson deal. I've said I've got suspicions, subject to what Tottenham managed to do with the centre-backs, that they might look for another centre-back to come in, because otherwise it might be a little bit light and short. So an out-and-out striker. Gift Orban's name was mentioned a lot a couple of weeks ago. It's gone pretty quiet. I don't think it's something that can't be revisited, but it's probably a no, to be totally honest. And as I keep saying with Richarlison, let's give it 10, 12 games and see where we sit afterwards. Like, no, I'm not impressed at the moment, but I do think it's got to get a proper run. He's got to get his confidence up. He's got to start smiling. January's got to start smiling. John Hughes says, after West Ham's win against Brighton last weekend, do you think that more teams are going to use that strategy to try and beat the Seagulls, keep up the great work? Well, it's not just West Ham, is it? Look at what Everton did there in May. And it is the best way to beat them. Draw them on. They go really high, and then you punch back on the counter with speed. It's the best way. And that's why almost for, and I don't mean to group West Ham with Everton here, but in terms of that style and brand and how you're setting up, it's almost easier for them than, say, Manchester United in game week 5. Like, you wouldn't, Manchester United play like that against Brighton at Old Trafford. The fans are going to get pretty paid. So it works. It works for some of these clubs. And Brighton will still... It's worth remembering, when Brighton went to Everton and did that, 6 days later they went to the Emirates and won 3-0. And it wouldn't be a shock to me if Brighton beat Newcastle on Saturday. So different styles, different opposition. Yes, is it the right way to set up and beat Brighton? Yeah, probably. But take Ange at Tottenham, he's not going to go, right, we're going to Brighton Boxing Day and we know this is the best way to beat them. He ain't going to do it. He's going to go, I want to out-football you. That's how it's going to be. Kaidu says, should I swap Richarlison for Maddison this week? I've already covered it, and I really don't want to do this to death and cover it over and over again. So the answer I gave for a question a little bit earlier on should help you out, Kaido. Edward S says, do you prefer Bono or Mbumo as a pick if you can bench whichever one for their tougher fixtures in the next few weeks? Mbumo in that case, I think. But I don't know when you'd want. Maybe Newcastle away you might bench, but yeah, Mbumo, save the money. Gary Rezzo, my Chelsea correspondent this afternoon, mate. Thoughts on Raul Jimenez for 5, 6 and 8? Probable wild card in 9. Yes, I'm serious. Okay, let's give it a serious answer. So the fixtures you've got there are Luton at home, Palace away, Sheffield United at home. Not terrible. Not terrible at all. I would probably prefer, with the same fixtures, mate, maybe Carlton Morris at Luton. Fulham away, Everton away, Tottenham at home. Might be better. You definitely know he's getting the starts. You definitely know he's on pens. Although Jimenez might be for Fulham as well. It's possible. He's certainly taken it for Wolves in the past, hasn't he? So I don't hate it. I'd be cautious of what I said. I was really impressed with Jimenez Tuesday night. But Jimenez also was quite good, particularly into the opening quarter at Arsenal on Saturday as well. So I don't hate it if it's for specifics, but it does also feel like you'd be waiting for a transfer out as well. That said, you've got the wildcard 9 solution to that. I mean, on the fixtures, Luton at home, Palace away, Sheffield United at home. Hard to argue against it, Gary. I don't hate it. It's not terrible. I'm just looking at alternatives at similar price. Like Morris might be one. Awoniyi is Burnley at home, Brentford at home, Palace away, but possibly a little bit too expensive. I don't hate it. It's not. You've got a plan with it, so I don't hate it. I imagine he probably does stay in the team, but the other problem you've got, Gary, is the deadline tomorrow is before the window shuts. Can you be absolutely certain at 6 o'clock tomorrow that Fulham won't buy a forward tomorrow night? I don't think we could be absolutely certain. JP says, when are you thinking of using the wild card? So I think there's the two kind of strategy ideas roughly, and there's plenty. To be honest, it's very open. But in terms of, for me personally, one is what Gary's just mentioned. So game week 9, I think he's reasonable. Kind of swing where it gets tough for Manchester City, it gets good for Liverpool. You arguably want to go 1 week earlier, game week 8. And that's not to say Gary should do the same, but I'd also advise Gary to have a look at going wildcard 8 instead of 9. And the other sort of roundabouts game week 16, when City come back into a really good run, despite the fact they've got a blank in game week 18, the fixtures around it are hella. And there's some other teams who have a few difficult runs who come into better runs. Newcastle, Chelsea and Tottenham come back into pretty good Christmas runs as well. So I'm probably leaning more towards the latter at the moment. Lauren Harris says, hey James, that's my new women's football correspondent. Hello Lauren. Says, hey James, with no fires in my team, I have 2 free transfers and I'm deciding between which of these to remove. Mitoma, Martinelli, Rashford, Estupinan. Which 2 would you remove? I'm not keen on removing Martinelli, particularly with Jesus back fit, personally. Can look at the matchup this week against Wan-Bissaka and think that's tough. I definitely don't look at game week 5 and think playing Patterson's tough. There's every chance we'll get free rein on that side against Tottenham in game week 6. So I wouldn't be that keen to remove Martinelli at the moment. I think for me, Rashford first, probably Lauren. And the other 2 probably comes down to which you want to buy most. There's a case to just use the one. I think that would probably be the sensible conclusion. Just go Mitoma or Estupinan for the home game this week. Yes, it's a tough home game. Just go with it. Move on Rashford. Leave the other one till 5. You got the international break. The transfer window will obviously close. You'll have more information. You can always have injuries, etc. over the break. I would want to do that, I think, Lauren. So I think Rashford and Roll would be the sensible answer. Johnny Hughes says, do you think that Onana is a hold, or would a 4.5 million goalkeeper be a better option? Perhaps Flecken. Listen, if anybody's in the luxury where they're thinking, I want to move my goalkeeper at the moment, like, well done. Like, if that's your biggest problem. But what did we go with Onana for in the first place? Was it just this period? Let's look forward. Let's look beyond Arsenal and Brighton and look at Manchester United's fixtures after that of Burnley away, Palace at home, Brentford at home, Sheffield United away, and then there's more good after that as well. And say, is that your biggest problem? What if he does get a clean sheet in one of these next two? It's probably a haul, isn't it? So, look, would I prefer probably to have a 4.5 keeper? Yeah, probably. But would I be moving that? No, not particularly. Atul Balaji says, hi James, after so many dark days on and off the pitch, I feel like the tides are finally turning for the better now. For Wolves, what are your thoughts on the Núñez situation and our new incomings? I don't know enough about the incomings at all, so to be honest, I'm not going to blag and give you anything that I don't know, so it would be wrong of me particularly to comment. Núñez, I covered a little bit earlier. Just for the benefit of the listeners, you're always massively positive on Wolves. But I think moving Núñez on and reinvesting the money looks like a very sensible idea. That's what I would say. Notorious Nerd says, beat defender to get this game which replaces Stupinan and Saliba. I mean, if it's one free transfer, it's a roll for me. I've got both, and I'm not particularly think they're selling either at the moment. So if you've got one free transfer, it's a roll. If you've got two, then I'd probably Brentford again. Pinnock. Atul would like everyone to smash the like button. Yes, smash the like button if you're watching live, guys. Hit the sub button. And for those on the audio, 5-star reviews. Tudge loves them. He's nice comments as well, and all that helps. Edward S says, do you prefer Flecken or Areola if second keeper is Turner? Flecken at the moment. Like I said, come back round sort of maybe game week 7-ish or so. Might feel a little bit different about that, because I think then it can work, potentially, Areola and Turner. And I'd have a consciousness about that myself if Dean Henderson was to take Sam Johnson's place at Palace, for example. But right now, in front of me, Flecken, I think. Jay says, hi James, hope you're well. Do you think going Pedro Porro is a good idea? I can bench him in a harder fixtures, so that wouldn't be a problem. I'd be picking up game week 5, so I could get Trippier instead. Thank you for the question, Jay, but I did kind of answer on a Porro question near the start, so I'm going to skip that for those who join the stream later. If you want Porro stuff, it's answered quite early in the stream. Sweet Blues says, of the following moves, which one do you prefer? Roll transfer and play one of Kabore, João Pedro, Archer. João Pedro to Morris. Kabore to a doggy, Pedro Porro. Sorry for the long question. That Kabore's fine to keep at the moment, and playing him against West Ham, is it terrible? No. Pedro against Newcastle, does he start? Good question, don't know the answer. Playing Morris against West Ham, it's fine. I probably wouldn't move Pedro to Morris personally. So, I mean, for me, it's probably roll. Pedro Gaming 2 says, some very tasty AFCON qualifying matches next week. Your predictions? My honest answer is, mate, I couldn't tell you a single fixture that was happening in AFCON. I couldn't tell you anything other than England playing Ukraine. In the European qualifiers even. Not a clue, mate. Nikolai says, hi James, if you had to sing a karaoke song, what would it be? I'm loving Big Angie instead. Yeah, maybe a bit of Angels or something. Losing My Religion, REM maybe. It wasn't an REM fan, but Losing My Religion is a decent one for karaoke, I think. Anything Oasis is alright, isn't it? You can get away with something like that. Shani Russell says, hi, Big James. Question to follow shortly, Sky related. But just want to say, 1, you're a legend. We will love you. And 2, remind these freeloaders to exercise their thumbs and drop a like. Drop a like. Yes, cheers. Can't see your question though, mate. Rob H says, buying a Brentford player on Saturday for Nakamba and Bumo seems obvious, but anyone else worth considering? So I'm fairly certain Rob is obviously asking a Sky question there. If you're going into Brentford, that would be the one. I'm probably making a move to Bissouma myself on Saturday. Mainly Minimal says, start Pedro or Saliba. Thanks, boss. I don't know. They might both end up on the bench for me, ironically. I haven't given it much thought. It's not a bullshit answer, but I mean, De Zerbi gave us stuff in his press conference last week, right? And I suspect he's going to get asked again. And who knows, he might come out and say, well, Pedro starts. And if he does, then it's probably Pedro first, isn't it? So I guess the answer comes down to just generally, do you fancy Arsenal for a clean sheet this way? If you do, then the answer is Saliba, isn't it? If you don't, then you probably might as well gamble João Pedro. That's probably the take at the moment. Emily Atkinson says, what do you think of Cole Palmer as a player? Yeah, I like him. Look, I obviously saw him in the Community Shield. I saw the last half hour of the Super Cup when we quite impressed as well against Seville. I'm surprised he's not seen a little bit more minutes in the Premier League. Does he go to Chelsea and be an automatic first choice? If he does, we should be very interested in that because he's 5 million, I believe, in FPL. So we should have an eye on that. I don't think it happens straight away, but it's another reason for me, probably personally, not to go Sterling this week, as I've got double Chelsea defence. And leave that option potentially open in case it's something that looks really good, and then that's kind of ideal fifth midfielder under that situation, then, isn't it? And you could almost rotate him with perhaps a forward around Morris's price maybe, and make a week to week decision. We spoke about this with players who are actually more expensive earlier in the week. Something like that shows up with Palmer. You're very interested, aren't you? I think. Yeah, good player. Am I surprised about the deal? Yeah. The money, I'm not surprised about anymore. You're buying the potential and the talent. This is Chelsea's philosophy at the moment. So even if it doesn't work, and they sold him on to Brentford in 2 years, do they get their money back? Well, at worst, they make a small loss or so, probably, right? Carl Miller says, thoughts on starting Turner over Onana this week? Don't think either keeps it clean, and Turner more potential for save points. Is that true? Is that true? Onana had, 6 saves against Wolves? I don't know. I think that comes down to what's more likely here. If you said to me, right, it's going to end 0-0 in those 2 games this week, which one's more likely? Is it the Arsenal game or is it the Chelsea game? It's probably the Chelsea game. Probably. Yeah, there's a case for it. Yeah, I mean, if someone said to me, I want to start Turner over Onana, I'd say, okay, like I don't have a problem with that, to be honest. So, yeah, it's okay. Alex MJ87 says, Chilwell, Gusto, Estupinan, Gvardiol, Doggy. Who to bench? Currently Doggy first, then Estupinan second on bench. I mean, I'd probably have Estupinan above Udogie, personally. Couldn't believe in the City. Couldn't leave Gvardiol out. You're not going to leave Chilwell or Gusto out with that fixture either. So, yeah, you probably got it right and maybe flip the bench order. Bertica says, having a shocker, pal. Need Richarlison and João Pedro gone, but no money. What to do with 12.5 million 2 FTs, mate? Well, that part depends as well, right? Do you need 2 starters here or not? So, short term, genuinely, if you're struggling for the money, Carlton Morris can be considered. West Ham, Fulham, Wolves, Everton, Tottenham, Nottingham Forest, next 6. I've got Luton top of my fixture ticker for the next 6. Top. So, he's definitely going to play. He's almost definitely on pens. That's the solution for you. And then you just move into Richarlison money somewhere else. So, how many 6.5s have you got to choose from if that's what you want to do? But, as kind of said previously, it might be a case of hold Richarlison for these next 2, maybe. And wait and see what De Zerbi says about Pedro, right? So, another option if you don't need the starter, just get Pedro down to Archer. You could even start that this week. He probably starts. I don't know. Once you started against Lincoln and didn't score last night. But you could take that move as well, couldn't you? Let's be honest. If it's Archer 1 point, João Pedro 1 point, you set it up and roll the transfer and give yourself more scope to move the money after the international break. That's not a terrible thing to do. Te Okasong, so if I mispronounce that, says, to free up funds, would you sell Salah or Rashford? I'm very conscious of keeping Salah in mind at the moment, to be totally honest. Very conscious of it. Like I said, I don't think he'll leave. The more sensible call here is Salah, in the sense if you don't think you're going to catch him at all in the next 5, and I suspect that might be the case, that's the easiest way to do it. But I'd leave yourself a real big consciousness of move forward 5 weeks. How are you thinking of getting back should you want to do so? And you may want to do so. Polat says, looking to move his Estupinan to a Tottenham defender this week. I know Doggy has the most attacking potential. Who do you think is the most nailed over the next 6 weeks? I can't afford a surprise benching. Well, in that case, it's the centre-back, subject to any business Tottenham might do in the transfer window over the next 36 hours. And as said, they may add one. But Mickey van der Ven has been really good. He was our best player at Fulham Tuesday night. Despite, it's an own goal. It's fine. He was our best player. So Romero and Van der Ven will not get benched as it stands. They will play every game. So if that's all you're bothered about, mate, get one of the centre-backs. Alistair Hargroves says, morning, James. Who's the best signing in the summer window from every Premier League club, in your opinion? God. Every Premier League club. Disasai. I'm going to run through the order of best fixtures over the next two. Disasai, Maddison, Gvardiol, Amdouni, Hamer, Giles, Szoboszlai, who have Newcastle bought, Tonali, Brentford haven't, Flecken, I suppose, has got to be, isn't it? Palace, Francho, the only one I've got at the moment, isn't it? Everton, Beto. I saw a bit of him last night. He looked alright in the last half hour. Declan Rice, Alcaraz at West Ham, Fulham, Bassi. Forest is... Who have Forest? Turner. Right, bottled this, did I? Bournemouth will be Kirkes, Villa, Diaby, Wolves. Have they bought anyone yet? Have they actually bought anyone? Can't think of anyone at Wolves, sorry. United, God, Hoyland, because we haven't seen him yet. And Brighton, maybe Julio, but we haven't seen him yet. Ansu Fati at the end of today, probably. Andres says, hi James, cash over Pedro Porro was good decision, thanks. Did I advise that? Now is Rashford for Sterling for -4, is it worth it? Thanks. Not for me. Play like that guy off any time. And that said, if Partey does play right back for Arsenal, then Rashford might have some joy. Prabish says, will Spurs buy new players without selling some? We will sell some. To define that. But it doesn't mean we'll buy anyone. Owen Jones says, hey James, do you believe in XG? Everton on 5.21. That's subject to which statistic model you use, with 0 goals. How much faith do you place in that? Because I think they're going down, but the numbers are good. So what you've got to do is it's relative, right? So sure, the XG is good. But the XG is good because they played Fulham without Paulinho and they played a Wolves who are in a rebuild job right now with a new manager. That's why it's high, right? Didn't have a high XG at Aston Villa in game week 2. So that's a perfect case where the fixtures matter here, right? It matters. It matters in our thinking. Now, it's worth saying, as mentioned, Sheffield United this week, Luton, Bournemouth, 7 and 8. Yeah, there's potential there, isn't there? So, yeah, it's 5.21 XG, but let's compare that to others and their fixtures. Everton had one of the best sets of opening 3 fixtures. So, on that basis, you could make a case you should have had some of the best XG. They can't finish 4, excuse the pun, toffee. Liam Doyle says, hi James, Sky question. If Colwell was injured, would you just move straight? Awani, thanks. Yes, possibly. But we think he's okay. So Nizar Cancelo is very well connected with Chelsea and was at the stadium last night. Said that he spoke to him after the game and he was fine. So we've got to take that on face value at the moment. Tom Glover says, what would your Spurs triple up be in FPL if you had to have one? Gosh. Maddison, Porro. There you go. I've answered the Porro Udogie question now. No, I haven't. Maddison, Porro, and Udogie. To be honest, no, that's not true either. I'd have Salah. I'd have Salah as best 4.5 midfielder in the game. So, yeah, if I was wildcarding right now and you said, right, you've got to have 3 for the next 2, and I probably wouldn't start Salah, that's what I'd do. Maddison, Porro, and Salah, I think. I didn't know if it went wrong with Porro, you can drop it down to Udogie. Paul H says, hi James, I'm thinking Martinelli to Maddison from -4. Reckon it's worth the hit. Cheers. No. I wouldn't dream of that, to be honest. Man said, good afternoon, also wondering about the state of Mr. Colwell. Yeah, covered. Jansky says, hi, James. Should I bench my Arsenal mids, namely Odegaard and Martinelli, or Moussa Diaby and Stupinan? Thanks. I would not be benching Arsenal players for the game at the Emirates. Not attacking players, anyway. No. Shani Russell wants everyone to sort it out. It's a free stream. Drop a like to show James some love. Cheers. Thank you. Right, I'm going to cover 2 more. And then I'm going to leave it there. I've read David H's third question, so he'll be last. Owen Jones says, any advice to gambling addicts? I find when I have too much time on my hands, I let myself down. Have you ever had any issues with gambling yourself, James? Thanks, and sorry for the odd question. You're the man. No, it's a great question, mate. Thank you. And thanks for admitting it. Yeah, I have. Not bad, but I felt a need and a requirement to have a bet on the football when I was young, in my teens, and a little bit in my early 20s, but more when it started. Even if it was just a quid, I wanted to have a bet on something. If I was watching the game for interest as much as anything. It never became a bad problem, I wouldn't say, for me. So to say I had a real probably not. No. So it was probably a really bad habit I had when I was a teenager in terms of too much, but I wasn't borrowing money to bet or anything like that, or get myself in serious trouble, if you will. It's not, I'm watching the game, I want to have a pound on it. That's kind of how it was. And I'm obviously going back quite a while here. I'm going back 20 years basically. I've obviously seen a lot of gambling issues because I then worked in the industry for over 10 years, and I've seen firsthand the damage it can do to people. So I am probably best placed more than others. Rather than have an open conversation here, obviously my DMs are open if you want to jump in them. We can have a chat about it privately there. And I think it's worth saying everybody's situation is different, so the advice for you might not be the right advice for somebody else. The obvious ones to start with is know that there are people there you can talk to. So I'm here. Sites like GamCare provide a decent service and stuff in terms of getting help with gambling. Obviously, self-exclusions should be on offer from all the bookies now and stuff if you want to go down that route, if it's that serious and stuff. But know that helps out. That's the best advice. Like, and that kind of relates to many other problems, right? Don't sit in silence. Like, you putting that in the chat already is like a major hurdle cleared, right? In saying there might be a little bit of an issue there. So in your case, you're saying it's often when you've got too much time on your hands, you let yourself down a bit. Okay. So find different interests. Find things where you haven't got too much time on your hands, and then you soon get yourself into a pattern. We stop thinking about it. I was going to bet on that, and I forgot to do it. And that's the start. It's the start of moving on. But yeah, I mean, feel free to DM me, mate. We can talk more. Dave 2 says, hi James, would you prioritise Pedro to Jackson or Odegaard to Maddison Sterling? I have Saka, regretting doing Salah to Odegaard last week as part of a double move to get Chilwell for Gabriel. Don't think you should regret getting Chilwell, mate. Prioritise Pedro to Jackson, Odegaard to Maddison Sterling. Again, I'm not sure I'd want to move Odegaard. Won't be sitting here this time last week. Oh my God, Odegaard's on pens now. Like, nah, just chill. If you've got, to be honest, yeah, I'd arguably do nothing there. Probably if you've only got one, if you've got 2 free and you want to use one, probably Pedro to Jackson. It's probably the better one, isn't it? In a sense of you've got known Chelsea forward and there's good fixtures coming up. That would be the one of the 2. David H says top 3 5 million midfielders. So Papsar is definitely one at the moment to put in there. I think we have to keep an eye on Cole Palmer, right? And his minutes coming in at that price. Another one. It's not for now because I think those guys would probably be better options. But do keep an eye on the Bournemouth mids. One of them I think will break out and look interesting in about 5-6 weeks' time when their fixtures swing. So keep an eye on the likes of Christie, Cliver, Anthony, Utara if he gets fit. One of them I can imagine might look like a good option. So I'd be keen to keep a close eye on them. Just above that, you've got your likes of Shardays and stuff, but there isn't anything kind of great in there. So Sar's best of them at the moment, and he's not a guaranteed starter, but there isn't anyone else at 4.5 that would be remotely interesting. There is Nakamba, sure, fine, going to play every week. Maybe something will develop in the transfer window where these these sort of ones show up a little bit more, like Archer's move, like Cole Palmer's move, and offer better options down there possibly. Right, I'll leave it there, guys. Sorry, I know there's a lot of you I didn't get to the questions. God, there's loads of you, but thank you very much for your contributions. I hope that that's answered questions. If anybody wants their question answered and I've not got to it, just drop me a tag on Twitter. Please don't DM me because I'm more likely to just ignore it. Just tag me on Twitter with your question and I'll come and answer it when I've got the time later today. If you're in the chat now, smash a like, hit the sub button, be very grateful for that. We've got Sheffield United versus Everton, a 6-pointer of a clash of correspondence tomorrow with Ben Tomo Thompson and Sean Norton. Clayton's joining me on Patreon later today for the transfer window shows, and will also be joining me for our game week 4 preview on Patreon tomorrow as well. If you want to support the show, www.patreon.com/Planet FPL. Whenever you join up now, you get billed the equivalent date the following month. So you don't, if you want to support the show, you don't have to wait for tomorrow. Support the show because you want to support the content or because you want additional content. No one promises to make you a better FPL manager. That is all for the stream. Thank you very much to all those who contributed live, and for the benefit of those on the audio, cue music please, Manchild.